Hi guys, it is that time again. It is time for me to rank my last 10 palettes. I do have like 12 that I haven't ranked yet, but I figured I will just do 10 this time, and then if there are any that you think are maybe missing, they're probably coming in my next ranking video. Because I don't want to do 12. I kind of like just having the number be 10. I don't know. Maybe it's just in my head. But today we have 10 that I'm going to be ranking. It hasn't been that long since last time I did that, but I have 10 here, as you can see. There's a lot of very small palettes in this batch, which I'm not mad at it, but I think it's going to make it a little bit harder to rank these. So I think we should just go ahead and get into it. If you're wondering what is on my eyes, this video should already be up. I did it with a new P. Louise palette, which is currently on the floor over there, and I'm too lazy to go get it. But if you're wondering what I'm wearing, that is what is on my face, and I freaking love this look. I feel so fall right now. I don't know, it just makes me really happy. So let's just go ahead and get into the rankings, I guess. So let's go ahead and start on the bottom because, I don't know, I just like going from bottom to the top. On the bottom is going to end up being the Underground palette by Makeup Maniacs. They did send me this palette. I have made a video with this. I think that the color story in this palette is really, really nice. It's very fall, as you can see. I mean, basically kind of the same colors that are on my eyes right now. But I did not like the shimmer formula in this. I felt like this is the weirdest shimmer formula that I think I've ever tried. They're almost kind of waxy. I know I said that so many times in that video, but I'm guessing a lot of you haven't watched it. But it's almost like there's a bit of resistance in them. So when you put them on the eyes, they stick in the spot where you put it, but you're not able to really spread it out because it's just so, it's kind of sticky and silicone-y feeling. I don't know, it's the weirdest formula ever. The mattes were quite nice, not my favorites. And there are also kind of mostly neutral mattes in this palette. Not neutral, but like warm toned browns and oranges and yellows. I know yellows and oranges aren't neutrals, but when you pair them only with browns, I still consider them to be quite neutral, if that makes any sense at all. But that is why this palette ended up on the bottom. It's also a $40 palette, and I just feel like that is too much for this palette, and it's quite overpriced, which honestly, overpriced goes for another palette in this bunch as well that ended up quite high on my list, but I'll talk about that one when I get to it. So let's move on to number 9. So this is a palette that I really was not expecting to be ranking as low as I did, but I had such a hard time ranking these palettes because I honestly quite like all of them. So this is so hard, and it makes me feel so bad because I've only used this palette once, and that goes with a lot of these palettes. Because if I were to do 3 looks or more with like every single palette that I own, I would get so backed up. I just wouldn't have time to like keep up with the new stuff. And since I do consider myself a review channel and I really do enjoy being a review channel, sometimes palettes just kind of, they get a video and that's it. You know, they end up in the pile of palettes. So this is one that I will use once. This is the Kaleidos. This is the purple one. It's called the Lunar Lavender. I will link the video that I did with the new collection up in the corner, but here's what the palette looks like. The only reason why this palette ended up being so low is because I had a really hard time with this purple, and it makes me really sad. And I also just felt like this purple just wasn't as dark and vibrant on the eye than it was in the pan, and it also just wouldn't really stick to my eye. And so with it being a purple palette and the purple not really working, this isn't really a purple palette anymore, you know? So that is why this ended up being low down, and also just because I have such high expectations for Kaleidos, and I've had such good luck with all of their other palettes that this one being a bit of a miss, I'm kind of like, what happened? You know, it just makes me sad because I wanted to love this so much, and since it kind of broke my heart a little bit, it just ended up low on my list. Next up, we have a palette that I'm not sure if the video on this palette is up yet, but this is a palette that I was sent from Octoly. This is the Pat McGrath Mothership eyeshadow palette. What are you called? I'm trying to find the name of this. It's the Rose Decadence palette. So this is a limited edition palette. Like I said, I did get this sent through Octoly, and I have filmed a video with it. Like I said, not sure if it's up yet, but I had a really good time with this palette. But obviously, it's a 6-pan palette and it only has 2 mattes, so there's really only so many looks that you can do with this. I think the formula is beautiful. Like I said in the video that I did film, I don't feel like this is really anything that I don't already have in my collection. I think the shimmers are nice, but I can easily dupe them with, you know, like indie brands or probably even in palettes that I own. These aren't any of the special shades from Pat McGrath. These are just like nice shimmers. But the mattes in this is definitely where this palette shines. This matte right here is so beautiful. It's so easy to work with. It's so buildable, it's so pigmented, it's everything that I want a matte shadow to be. And I do really, really like this palette. I'm grateful that I was able to test this out. I had a really good time with it, and I'm happy to have it in my collection, but it is quite limiting, so it did have to just end up kind of low on my list. Now let's move into the number 6 spot, and here we have the Oden's Eye Mini Sky palette. So obviously all of the Oden's Eye palettes are going to be in this ranking, which is 4 of them. So this is the first one. This is the pinky purpley neutrally one, if you want to call it that. It was so hard for me to rank these mini palettes because I really like them all, but I also feel like they're very limiting. Like they're all very limiting and challenging to use because of the color stories. But this one I just felt like was so similar to this one, like color story wise, that I don't know, it just seemed like it fit in here, and it's a little too neutral for me. I wish that this palette had a matte purple. That would have been so amazing. I wish that all of these mini ones from Oden's Eye didn't all have a matte brown. I just think that it would have made them a little bit more fun, but since all of them do only really have neutral mattes, except for some have a pop of blue, I don't know, they're just not my favorite color stories, but the formulas in them are absolutely amazing. And I had a really, really good time playing with all of these. I do have a video doing 3 looks, one with each of the mini palettes. I will link that in the corner as well, but I think it is a really nice palette. It's just the colors in it, like the color story is just not that inspiring to me. So this ended up being the lowest of the mini palettes. Next up, we're going back to Kaleidos, and this is the Futurism 7, Sashimi City. You've probably seen this one. This is the neutral palette. You're probably surprised that I put this higher up than the purple, but I didn't have any problems working with this one, and this shimmer is everything. It's just like, some of you said it, it's just like Besties from Menagerie, and that shade is one of my favorites in my collection, so I'm not surprised that this ended up quite high. I also think that there's a lot of depth in this palette, and they performed really, really well. I'm just happy with this palette. You know, for being a neutral palette, this is pretty much like a perfect neutral palette for me. So happy to have it in my collection. Probably wouldn't have bought it myself just because of the color story, but like I said, glad to have it. I think it performs really well. Let's move on. So we are on number 5. So we have another one of the mini Oden's Eye palettes, and this is the mini Forest palette. We are in the forest right now as we speak. So here's what this one looks like. Again, it was just really hard for me to rank all of these mini palettes, and honestly, they all could have been in each other's spots and I still would have been happy with it. I don't know, it was just very tough for me. I think this one ended up a little bit higher just because it's a little more colorful, but I also again wish that there wasn't a brown in this. Like I wish there was. What if there was like a dark green? Like that would have been so fun instead of this one. That would have made this color story so much easier to work with and just more versatile in my opinion, and just more exciting. So the brown matte in all of these palettes kind of pull it down a little bit for me, but I know for most people that is kind of what they're looking for in like their everyday palettes and stuff. And since this is a Swedish brand, I feel like it's not that they're catering to like the Swedish market, but they are surrounded by people who wear less colorful makeup all the time, because people in Sweden tend to be kind of toned down. Obviously not all of them. Angelica, I'm looking at you if you're seeing this, but just in general, I feel like they're more into like the more toned down and muted makeup with maybe a pop of color, and this is exactly that. So maybe that was what they were thinking when they were making these palettes. I'm not really sure, but every brand just seems to love having browns in their palettes anyway, so I'm not really surprised. So in the number 4 spot, this is going to be the last of the mini palettes from Oden's Eye. This is the Mini Ocean palette, which looks like this. This is beautiful. My only complaint with this is I wish there wasn't so much glitter in this shadow, but it is still a really, really beautiful orange. And I really like the shimmers in this. Like these 2 shimmers here are everything. And also this kind of satiny blue matte. As much as I don't like satins, it actually kind of works as a matte if you use it along with this blue. So you can definitely do an all blue crease and still get some depth, and I do appreciate that. And I don't know, I'm just a sucker for blue eyeshadow. So this one ended up as the highest ranked of the mini palettes. Let's move into the top 3. Obviously, we still have the biggest Oden's Eye palette left because that one is in this pile as well. But first off is the Lucky Bunny Gluttony palette. So this is going to be my number 3 spot. The reason why this one ended up being so high is because I love the color story so much, and the mattes in this are spectacular. I love, love, love the mattes in this. The shimmers are so-so. They're not my favorite formula, but I know I've said many times in the past, like for me, it's more important to have versatile mattes than it is to have, you know, amazing shimmers. So I will always choose a palette to work with that has really good mattes and has a good range of mattes in it, because that is how I build my eye look around. You know, I can put a whatever shimmer on my lid and still have the look really nice if I have good mattes, and this is definitely good matte. So yeah, this palette, I just really like the color story in it, and like I said, I think it performed really well. I did make a video with it. If there's anything that you want to see videos with that you haven't seen yet, you can always go to my channel page and just search for it. There is a magnifying glass if you're on your computer, and you just type in whatever brand that you're looking for and my videos should pop up. So this is from Lucky Bunny Cosmetics. Like I said, they did send me this as well. Actually, all of these palettes have been sent to me. Is that true? Let me take a look again here. Holy crap, that is kind of insane. I did not realize that until now. Wow. Yeah, so everything in this video is PR. But I definitely would have bought a lot of these myself personally too if they weren't sent to me. But yeah, that is crazy. Oh my god, I just realized that. Okay, so the number 2 spot on my list, this was so hard because I know I gave this palette kind of a, not a bad review, but this is the Enchanted Luster Dragon Prism 2 palette. As you can see, this is a blank white palette because I ripped off the sticker that was on the outside because it just made it look really cheap. But this is what the palette inside looks like. I will link this video in the corner if you want to see it, but this is basically an all kind of multi-chrome, duochromic goodness palette. And when I've used this, I've had a really good time with it. Like the shades in here are beautiful. It's not worth the money in my opinion. It is like 140 Australian dollars. I forget what I said. I'll have it on the screen if I'm wrong. But I don't know. I'm not sure I would pay that much money for this palette, especially with the packaging being as cheap as it is. But the shadow inside are beautiful. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. So I don't know. This palette, looking at this palette makes me really happy. And even though it's not a standalone palette for me, because it does have all shimmers, I still feel like it's really easy to like pull this into other videos, and I'll probably use this quite a bit when I do looks with the P. Louise palette that I'm wearing, because that one only has 3 shimmers and they're all very dark. So I'm gonna need something to brighten it up with, so maybe I will pull in this palette and use it a little bit in that video. So we are on to the number 1 palette in this batch, and I don't think any of you are really going to be surprised by this, but this is going to be the Oden Elva 2 eyeshadow palette. I did 7 looks with this, which I was really only planning on doing 3, but I started working with this and I just had such a good time. And I was so inspired by this color story, and I just really like this. I know there are 2 pressed glitters in it, which I don't appreciate, but the rest of the shades in here are just so beautiful and they're so easy to work with, and it's so colorful and it's so fun, and I just really enjoy it. So yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. It is also the most colorful palette in this ranking list, so that probably has something to do with it, but I also do really enjoy this palette. So that's gonna be my ranking this time. It probably honestly won't be long until my next one, because I think I have 4 palettes already that needs to go in my next ranking. So yeah, shouldn't be a long wait. Let me know if you were surprised by any of my rankings. Did you think maybe I would put my Kaleidos palettes a little bit higher up? Because when I started like sitting down to do this ranking, I thought I would, but when I was like kind of going through it, I was like, you know what? They just belong lower on my list that time, which makes me sad, but sometimes that happens. Sometimes my favorite brands don't always make it to the top, and it just depends on the palette. So yeah, thank you so much for watching another one of my ranking videos. If you want to see my ranking playlist, I will put that right there. And if you're new, I would love it if you would consider subscribing, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.